The alarm bells rang across Terminus Prime Racing Station as another ship exploded against the rocky walls of the death track. Zektar watched the flames die out in the thin atmosphere and shook his four-armed body in sadness. That made it 847 dead racers in 200 years. Commander Yara walked up to him with her usual worried expression. Her blue skin was even paler than normal. That was pilot Vex Kun from Cetacea. He had won 17 major races before this. Zektar nodded his large head. They always think they can be the first. They study the track for months. They bring the best ships and the finest equipment. But the death track does not care about any of that. The death track stretched for 15 kilometers across the dead world's surface. It wound through gravity wells that could crush a ship like paper. Sharp rocks jutted out like teeth waiting to bite. The ground shifted without warning. Radiation storms could fry electronics in seconds. Most deadly of all were the 3 gravity wells that pulled ships in different directions at the same time. "Why do we keep this terrible place open?" Yara asked. She had asked this question many times before. "Because every species in the galaxy believes they can beat it," Zektar replied. "The Kralians think their 4 arms give them better control. The Cetaceans believe their big brains can calculate the perfect path. The Zephyrians trust their speed will carry them through. They all fail because they think too much." The death track had been built by an ancient race that disappeared long ago. No one knew why they made something so dangerous. Some said it was a test. Others thought it was punishment for crimes. All anyone knew for sure was that no living being had ever finished it. Zektar had worked at the track for 50 years. He had seen every type of failure possible. Ships torn apart by gravity, pilots crushed by sudden pressure changes, racing craft melted by radiation. Smart pilots who tried to be careful died just as quickly as crazy ones who went too fast. "The problem is not the track," he told Yara as they walked back to the control center. "The problem is how we think. We try to control everything. We make plans for every possible danger, but this track changes too fast for plans." The control room was full of screens showing data from the crashed ship. Engineers were already studying what went wrong. They would write reports and make recommendations. Other racers would read these reports and think they could do better. Then they would die, too. "Sir," called out Tech Officer Mordak from his station, "we have a message coming in from Sector 7. "Put it on screen," Zektar said. The image showed a transport ship that Zektar did not recognize. The pilot looked strange, too. The being had only 2 arms and smooth skin without scales or fur. Its hair was black, and its eyes were small but bright. "This is Captain Lee from Earth Transport 7, the pilot said. "We request permission to dock at Terminus Prime Racing Station." "Earth?" Yara looked confused. "I have never heard of this world." Zektar had heard whispers about a new species that had joined the galaxy recently. They called themselves humans. Most races ignored them because they seemed weak and small. They had no claws or armor. Their ships were simple. Their technology was basic. "Permission granted," Zektar responded. "What brings you to our station?" "We have a racer on board who wants to attempt your death track," Captain Lee replied. The control room went quiet. Everyone stared at the screen in shock. "Did this human study our track data?" Yara asked. "Some," Captain Lee said with a strange expression that might have been a smile. "But Jin Park says he does not need to study it too much. He says it looks fun." Fun. Zektar had heard many words used to describe the death track over the years. Deadly, impossible, cursed, evil, but never fun. "Does this Jin Park understand that 847 beings have died on this track?" Zektar asked. "He knows," Captain Lee replied. "He watched some of the old recordings. He says the other racers were thinking too hard. He wants to try thinking less." Thinking less. This was the opposite of what every expert recommended. The best minds in the galaxy had studied the death track. They created detailed plans and backup systems. They built the safest ships possible. None of it worked. "We will prepare a docking bay," Zektar said. For the first time in years, he felt curious about a new racer. Not hopeful, just curious. After the transmission ended, Yara turned to him with wide eyes. "Are you really going to let another being die on that track?" "If this human wants to throw away his life, that is his choice," Zektar replied. "But something tells me this might be different." "How could it be different?" Zektar looked out at the death track through the big window. The ancient course waited in the distance like a sleeping monster. "Because every other racer who came here was afraid of dying. This human sounds like he is afraid of being bored." The human transport ship grew larger on the screens as it approached the station. Soon Zektar would meet this Jin Park, who thought the galaxy's most dangerous racetrack looked fun. He wondered if humans were very brave or very stupid. Maybe there was no difference between the two. Jin Park stepped off the transport ship and looked around the docking bay with bright eyes. He was smaller than most galactic species, with smooth skin and black hair tied back in a simple knot. He wore a strange outfit covered in colorful patches and symbols. "Welcome to Terminus Prime," Zektar said as he approached the human. "I am Track Administrator Zektar." Jin bowed his head slightly. "Thank you for letting me come here." "I am Jin Park. Is that the death track out there?" He pointed through a window toward the distant course. "Yes." "Are you certain you want to attempt it? We have very detailed safety briefings that take 3 days to complete." Jin waved his hand. "I watched the recordings on the ship. I think I understand enough." Zektar was shocked. Every other racer had spent weeks studying every detail of the track. They analyzed each turn and measured every danger. "The briefings contain important survival information." "I am sure they do," Jin replied with a smile. "But too much information makes me think too much. When I think too much, I get slow." Commander Yara joined them, carrying a thick data pad full of safety protocols. "Mr. Park, these regulations exist to protect you. Every racer must complete the full safety course before attempting the track." Jin looked at the data pad and laughed. "How many pages is that?" "Only 437 pages, Yara said proudly. "We have made it much shorter over the years." "And how many racers who read all those pages finished the track?" Yara's face fell. "Well, none. But that does not mean the safety protocols are wrong." Jin walked to the window and stared out at the death track. "On Earth, we have something called motorcycle racing. Riders go very fast on two-wheeled machines. The first safety rule is simple. Do not think about crashing." "That makes no sense," Yara protested. "You must think about all possible dangers to avoid them." "When you think about crashing, your body gets stiff," Jin explained. "Stiff bodies cannot react quickly. Quick reactions keep you alive." Zektar found himself interested in this strange human logic. "What other dangerous activities do you do on Earth?" Jin's eyes lit up. "Many things. I have jumped off cliffs wearing wingsuits. I have raced through storm clouds in small aircraft. I have driven vehicles across ice that could break at any moment." "Why?" Yara asked. "Why would anyone choose to do dangerous things?" Jin thought for a moment. "Because danger makes you feel alive. When everything could go wrong, you have to be perfect in that moment. Not perfect like a plan, but perfect like water flowing around rocks." This was a concept that made no sense to any galactic species. They all valued careful planning and risk management. The idea of seeking danger for pleasure seemed like madness. "Can we see your racing vehicle?" Zektar asked. Jin led them to another part of the docking bay where his ship waited. It was much smaller than typical racing craft and looked like it had been built by combining parts from many different machines. Strange fins stuck out at odd angles. The hull was covered in scratches and burn marks. "This ship has been in many races?" Yara asked, noting the damage. Every mark tells a story, Jin said, running his hand along a deep scratch. This one is from when I flew through a meteor shower on Kepler Station. This burn mark is from racing too close to a star. This dent is from when I bounced off an asteroid and kept going. Bounced off an asteroid? Zektar repeated. Sometimes the best way through a problem is not around it, Jin replied. Sometimes you have to go through it and deal with what happens next. An alarm sounded throughout the station. Another racer was attempting the death track. They all watched through the window as a sleek silver ship entered the course. It moved carefully and slowly, following the recommended safe path. Kellyan design, Zektar noted. Pilot Tasmor has been preparing for 6 months. His ship has the best safety systems money can buy. They watched as the silver ship approached the first gravity well. It slowed down even more and tried to navigate around the edge. For a moment, it looked like the careful approach might work. Then the gravity well shifted, as they always did without warning. The silver ship was pulled in and crushed in seconds. 848, Zektar said quietly. Jin watched the destruction with a calm expression. He was trying not to get caught by the gravity. That made him predictable. How can you avoid something that pulls you in? Yara asked. You do not avoid it, Jin said. You use it. Gravity is not your enemy if you make it your friend. This was exactly the kind of thinking that got people killed, Zektar thought. But somehow, when Jin said it, it sounded reasonable. When can I make my attempt? Jin asked. You need to complete the safety course first, Yara insisted. How about this? Jin suggested. Let me read the first 10 pages tonight. If I die tomorrow, you can tell everyone I should have read more. Zektar looked at this strange human who treated death like a minor inconvenience. Every instinct told him to force Jin to follow proper procedures, but proper procedures had failed 848 times. Very well, he decided, but we will monitor everything. If your ship shows any signs of failure, we will abort the attempt. Jin smiled. Fair enough. Just remember that on Earth, we have a saying, the biggest risk is not taking any risks. As they walked back toward the control center, Zektar wondered if he was about to witness the 849th death on the death track or something that had never happened before in galactic history. Either way, tomorrow would be very interesting. The morning of Jin's attempt, beings from across the galaxy gathered to watch. News of the human racer had spread quickly. Some came to see the death track finally claim another victim. Others hoped to witness something new. Jin sat in his strange ship, running through his pre-flight routine. Unlike other racers who spent hours checking every system, he simply started the engines and stretched his arms. All systems show normal, reported Tech Officer Mordak from the control room. Define normal for a human ship, Zektar muttered. Nothing about Jin's craft followed standard design rules. Through the communication system, they could hear Jin humming a tune from Earth. He sounded completely relaxed, as if he was about to take a peaceful flight through safe space instead of attempting the galaxy's most deadly course. Final safety check complete, Yara announced, though she had spent most of the night worrying about this moment. Death track control to Jin Park, Zektar called. You are cleared for attempt number 849. All rescue teams are standing by. Thank you, Zektar. Jin's voice came back cheerfully. See you at the finish line in about 30 seconds. 30 seconds. The current record for getting furthest along the track was held by a Vulcarian pilot who had lasted almost 3 minutes before his ship was torn apart. No one had ever suggested completing the entire course in 30 seconds. Track timer starting now, Mordak announced. Jin's ship shot forward like a bullet. Most racers approached the first section slowly and carefully. Jin went straight toward the center at maximum speed. He is going to hit the gravity well head-on, Yara gasped. But Jin did not try to avoid the gravity well. Instead, He angled his ship so that the gravitational pull would sling him around like a stone from a sling. His speed increased dramatically as he used the very force that had destroyed so many others. "Impossible," whispered a cetacean observer. "The mathematics do not work." Jin's ship whipped around the gravity well and shot toward the second section. Here, chunks of rock floated in patterns that changed every few seconds. Other racers had tried to plot safe paths through the debris. Jin simply flew straight through, dodging rocks by tiny margins. "His reaction time is incredible," Zektar said, watching the displays. "He is not planning his moves, he is just reacting." The ship twisted and rolled between the floating rocks like a dancer. Sometimes Jin flew so close to the debris that his hull scraped against the stone, but somehow he never hit anything directly. 10 seconds elapsed, Mordak called out. "He has already passed the debris field." No one had ever gotten past the debris field in less than 2 minutes. The control room fell completely silent as everyone watched the impossible happen. The third section contained the Widow's turn, a 90-degree change in direction that required ships to slow down dramatically. The gravitational forces made sharp turns deadly. Every ship that had reached this point had been crushed when they tried to make the turn. Jin approached the Widow's turn at full speed with no sign of slowing down. "He has to slow down," Yara said. "The turn will tear his ship apart." Jin did not slow down. Instead, he rolled his ship completely upside down and used his engines in a way that defied all known physics. The ship seemed to fall sideways around the turn, using gravity and momentum instead of fighting them. 15 seconds, Mordak announced, his voice shaking. "He just made the Widow's turn." The fourth and fifth sections were full of radiation storms and unstable terrain. Ships needed heavy shielding and careful navigation to survive. Jin's ship had minimal shielding, and he was moving faster than any vehicle should in such dangerous conditions. But the radiation seemed to miss him. The unstable ground collapsed just after he passed over it. It was as if the track itself was helping him instead of trying to kill him. 20 seconds. He is in the final approach. The final section was a straight run to the finish line, but it was guarded by the most powerful gravity well on the entire track. This well had destroyed every ship that reached it by pulling them down into the planet's surface. Jin aimed directly at the gravity well, just like he had done with the first one. But this time, he shut off his engines completely. "His engines just stopped," Yara cried. "He will crash." But Jin was not trying to fight the gravity well. He was using it as a final acceleration boost. His ship fell toward the surface, gaining tremendous speed. At the last possible moment, he restarted his engines and pulled up, using the gravity well's own force to launch him toward the finish line. 25 seconds, Mordak called. 26, 27. Jin's ship crossed the finish line as the timer reached 29.7 seconds. The control room erupted in chaos. Alarms were going off because the computer systems could not believe what they had recorded. Beings were shouting in languages from across the galaxy. Several observers had fainted from shock. "Computer, verify track completion time," Zektar commanded. "Track completion confirmed," the computer replied. "Time, 29.7 seconds. New record established." Jin's voice came through the communication system, calm as ever. "That was fun. Is there a place to land near the finish line?" Zektar stared at the displays showing Jin's ship circling safely near the end of the death track. In 30 seconds, this small human had done what no being in galactic history had ever accomplished. He had not just survived the death track, he had made it look easy. "Jin Park," Zektar said slowly, "you have just broken every record and every rule we thought we knew about racing." "Cool," Jin replied. "Do you have any other impossible tracks I could try?" For the first time in 50 years, Zektar started laughing. This human had turned the galaxy's understanding of courage and skill completely upside down. and he wanted to do it again. Within hours of Jin's record-breaking run, the galaxy exploded with news. Communication networks across every world carried the same impossible story. A human had completed the death track in under 30 seconds. The Galactic Racing Federation called an emergency meeting. Fleet Admiral Kex Tar, the highest-ranking Vulcarian in Racing Authority, arrived at Terminus Prime with a team of investigators. "This result cannot be accurate," Admiral Kex Tar announced as he studied the timing data. "Our computers have checked the recordings 57 times. The mathematics are impossible." Jin sat in the meeting room, still wearing his racing suit and looking completely relaxed. Around him, some of the smartest beings in the galaxy argued about what they had witnessed. "The human ship's trajectory violated 12 fundamental laws of physics," declared Dr. Yithron, a cetacean scientist. "No vehicle can survive the gravitational forces we recorded." "Maybe your laws are wrong," Jin suggested with a smile. The room fell silent. For thousands of years, galactic civilization had been built on scientific laws that everyone accepted. No one had ever suggested that the laws themselves might be incomplete. "The laws of physics do not change because one being claims to break them," Admiral Kex Tar said coldly. "I did not break them," Jin replied. "I just use them differently. On Earth, we have a sport called surfing. Surfers do not fight the waves. They ride them." Zektar had been studying the recordings all day. "I have watched every attempt on the death track for 50 years. This human did something none of us understood. He worked with the track instead of against it." "That is insane," Dr. Yithron protested. "The track is designed to kill anything that enters it." "Maybe it was designed to test something," Jin said thoughtfully. "What if the ancient race that built it wanted to find beings who could think in new ways?" Commander Yara brought in reports from across the galaxy. "Requests for human racing attempts are coming in from every major circuit. The Void Runners want to meet with Jin personally. 3 different species have asked if humans can teach their pilots." Jin looked surprised. "Teach? I just do what feels right." "That is exactly what they want to learn," Zektar explained. "For thousands of years, every species has approached danger by trying to control it. You approach it by dancing with it." Over the next few days, Jin became the most famous being in galactic history. Young members of every species began questioning their traditional safety-first attitudes. Some elders worried that human influence would lead to reckless behavior and unnecessary deaths. "We must study this human phenomenon carefully," Admiral Kex Tar decided. "I am authorizing a full research project to understand how human minds process danger differently." Dr. Yithron began running tests on Jin's reactions and brain patterns. The results confused her more than ever. "Human neural pathways are extremely chaotic," she reported. "Most galactic species have organized, logical thought patterns. Humans seem to think in random bursts and sudden connections." "That sounds right," Jin agreed. "My brother used to say my brain was like popcorn. Lots of little explosions that somehow made sense together." Jin's mention of his brother was the first personal detail he had shared. Zektar noticed the sad look that crossed the human's face for just a moment. "Your brother was also a racer?" Zektar asked gently. "He was everything," Jin replied quietly. "Race car driver, mountain climber, storm chaser. He said life was only worth living if your heart was beating fast." "What happened to him?" Jin was quiet for a long time. "He tried to climb a mountain during a blizzard. The weather was too dangerous, but he thought he could beat it. Sometimes even humans get too confident." The room fell silent as everyone understood. Jin had not come to the death track just for fun. He had come to honor his brother's memory by succeeding where others failed. "Is that why you race?" Dr. Yithron asked. "Partly," Jin admitted, "but also because I am good at it, and because someone needs to show that impossible things can be possible." News arrived that changed everything. A message came from the Andromeda Racing Guild, the most exclusive and dangerous racing organization in known space. The Void Runners have officially invited humanity to attempt their ultimate challenge, Commander Yara announced. They want to test human abilities on tracks that make the death track look simple. Jin's eyes lit up with excitement. What kind of tracks? Races through black hole event horizons, courses inside active volcanoes on gas giant moons, tracks that exist in multiple dimensions at the same time. Everyone in the room looked horrified except Jin, who looked like he had just been offered the best gift in the universe. "When do we start?" he asked. Admiral Kextar stood up slowly. "Mr. Park, you have already proven that humans possess unique abilities. You do not need to risk your life again to prove anything more." "This is not about proving anything," Jin replied. "This is about living. My brother taught me that the only real failure is not trying." Zektar watched the young human and saw something he recognized from his own youth, the hunger for challenges that seemed impossible. But he also saw wisdom that most thrill-seekers lacked. "If you decide to accept these challenges," Zektar said carefully, "you will need help. Racing alone in unknown dangers is not bravery. It is suicide." Jin looked around the room at all the beings who had spent days arguing about his achievement. "Would any of you want to learn how humans approach racing? I could teach you what I know." The suggestion shocked everyone. Humans teaching advanced galactic species? It was unthinkable. But Dr. Yithran raised her hand slowly. "I would like to understand how human minds work. Perhaps we could learn from each other." Then Zektar raised one of his 4 arms. "I have watched beings die for 50 years. I would like to learn how to help them live." Soon half the room had volunteered to work with Jin. The human who had broken every racing record in 30 seconds was about to break something even more important: the barriers between species who had never learned from each other before. "Well," Jin said with his usual smile, "this should be interesting." 6 months after Jin's record-breaking run, Terminus Prime had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history, a training academy where different species learned from each other. Jin stood in the converted hangar bay that now served as a classroom, watching his most unlikely student prepare for another practice run. Zektar sat in a modified racing craft, his 4 arms moving over the controls with new confidence. "Remember," Jin called out through the communication system, "do not think about the path. Feel where the ship wants to go." This advice would have been considered madness by every racing instructor in the galaxy. Ships did not want to go anywhere. They were machines that required precise control and careful planning. But over the past months, Jin had proven that his strange teaching methods worked. Zektar launched into the practice course that Jin had designed. It was much safer than the death track, but used the same principles. Gravity wells, moving obstacles, and unpredictable terrain challenged pilots to react instead of plan. "I can feel it," Zektar's excited voice came through the speakers. "The gravity well is not pulling me. It is offering to help." Jin watched as his friend used the gravitational force to sling himself around a turn that should have been impossible for someone of his species. Zektar's time was still much slower than Jin's, but he had completed the course successfully 3 times in a row. "Excellent," Jin called out as Zektar crossed the finish line. "Your time just improved by 12 seconds. Dr. Yithran approached with her datapad full of measurements and recordings. Over the months, she had become fascinated by the changes she observed in students who learned human-style racing techniques. "The neural pathway modifications are remarkable," she reported. "Zektar's brain now shows the same chaotic pattern bursts that we see in human thinking. But he retains his species' natural precision for critical moments." This was the breakthrough that Jin had hoped for. He was not trying to make other species think exactly like humans. He was helping them combine their natural strengths with human adaptability. How many students can complete the practice course now? Jin asked. 17 out of 23, Dr. Yithron replied proudly. And none of them have suffered serious injuries. This was amazing progress. Before Jin's arrival, the idea of safe danger training was considered impossible. Now they had beings from 7 different species learning to dance with forces that used to terrify them. Commander Yara joined them with news from across the galaxy. The Void Runners have agreed to let our graduates attempt their easier tracks first. They want to see if human training methods work in different environments. Jin felt pride and worry at the same time. His students were ready for bigger challenges, but he knew how dangerous the Void Runner tracks could be. We will go together, he decided. No one attempts unknown dangers alone. A new voice interrupted their discussion. That sounds like the kind of adventure my brother would have loved. Everyone turned to see a young human woman walking into the hangar bay. She looked very similar to Jin, with the same bright eyes and confident smile. Lee! Jin ran to embrace his sister. What are you doing here? Earth finally approved additional human personnel for the racing project, Lee explained. They sent me to help establish permanent training facilities. Also, I brought something for you. She handed Jin a small device that projected a holographic message. The image showed an older human man with kind eyes and graying hair. Hello, son, the hologram said. I heard about your amazing achievement and your teaching work. Your brother would be very proud of what you have accomplished. But more than that, he would be proud of how you are helping others. Remember that the best victories are the ones that make everyone stronger. Jin wiped tears from his eyes as the message ended. His father's words reminded him why he had really come to the death track. It was not just about breaking records or seeking thrills. It was about proving that limitations could be overcome. Sir, Zektar approached respectfully, there is something we want to tell you. Jin looked around and saw all his students gathering in a circle. Even the usually serious Dr. Yithron was smiling. We have been discussing the Void Runner invitation, Zektar continued. We know it will be dangerous, but we also know that we have learned something important here. We want to continue learning together. The galaxy has watched beings fail at impossible challenges for thousands of years, added Dr. Yithron. Now they are watching beings succeed. Your teaching has changed more than racing techniques. It has changed how we think about what is possible. Over the next few weeks, Jin and his team prepared for their departure to the Void Runner territories. The Death Track, once known as a graveyard for champions, had been renamed the Challenge Track. It now had multiple difficulty levels and safety systems that allowed students to learn gradually. The night before their departure, Jin stood alone on the observation deck, looking out at the track that had made him famous. Lee found him there, staring at the course that had changed his life. Nervous about the next challenge? She asked. A little, Jin admitted. The Void Runners do not play games. Their tracks really can kill you if you make mistakes. But you will not be going alone, Lee reminded him. You have the best team in the galaxy now. Jin smiled at this. His students had become more than pupils. They had become friends and partners. Together, they represented something new in galactic history, different species working as one team. Do you think we can really teach the galaxy to think differently? Jin asked. You already have, Lee replied. Look around. 6 months ago, these beings thought danger was something to avoid. Now they think it is something to dance with. You gave them permission to be brave. The next morning, Jin and his team departed for the Void Runner territories. Behind them, the challenge track continued to train new students in the art of controlled chaos. Ahead of them waited challenges that no being had ever attempted. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Jin felt the same excitement that had brought him to the death track in the first place. But now it was mixed with something even better, the knowledge that he was not facing the impossible alone. The galaxy was full of incredible dangers and amazing possibilities. Jin Park and his team were ready to dance with both. In the end, the greatest victory was not setting a 30-second record on an impossible track. It was teaching others that impossible was just another word for untried.